Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your forbearance. I apologise for the late start of this meeting. We've had some technical issues with the microphones this morning. So very pleased to see you managed to today. I'm just going to go through my normal preamble, just in case there are people that haven't been here before, and also for people that are watching the meeting online. So this is a meeting of the Eastern Area Planning Committee, which is one of 3 area-based committees of Dorset Council, and our area of remit covers the previous Purbeck and East Dorset areas. For the benefit of the public, I'm Councillor Tony Coombs, who's chairman of the committee. The Office of Support, we have Anna Lee, Head of Service, Phil Crowther, our Senior Lawyer, Megan Rochester, our Committee Support Officer, and then the other officers I will introduce to you as we go through the applications on the agenda. I'd also like to thank all the officers behind the scenes who've made today possible. As I said, I'm very pleased to see so many of you here today to come to the meeting, to listen to the debate and the decisions being taken. For some of the applications, there is the opportunity to address the committee directly in accordance with our procedures. And please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed. A copy of the recording of the meeting is available on the website afterwards, and by attending this meeting, you do consent to being filmed. If you have any mobile devices, can you please make sure they're switched off or turned to silent? So if I now move on to the agenda, apologies for absence, please.
We've received apologies for absence from councillors John Worth and Julie Robinson.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination from members of the committee on any item on today's agenda?
I went on a site visit.
Can you speak closely into the microphone, please?
On 2 want to, yeah, I went on the site visit with the local member, so I'm not allowed to take part in the debate.
The first application, Blackfield Lane?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll get that recorded. Are there any other declarations that members need to make at this point? If anything does become apparent, can you let us know as soon as you realise, and then we'll deal with it at that. Okay. So the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 13th of March have been circulated to members in advance of this meeting and have been published on the website. Are members happy that I sign them as an accurate record at the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you. But moving on to public participation, can I remind members of the public this is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting, and only those who have registered to speak will be allowed to address the committee. We have 3 applications on the agenda before us today. Have there been any requests for deferral or withdrawal, please?
Yes, Madam Chairman. Agenda item 7, which is P full 2023 06130, relating to 1 Christchurch Road, Longham, Burndown, has been withdrawn by the applicant and is no longer with the council for determination. No specific reason was given for the withdrawal. The applicant's agent has stated that they'll be submitting a revised application in due course.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. So, background information relating to the applications before us today has been made available for inspection by members prior to the meeting. That covers consultations, objections and representations, as well as the East Dorset and Purbeck local plans and the council's related policies. For the benefit of everyone here today, including those listening online, I'm going to explain briefly how the meeting will work. I would invite the case officer to deliver the presentation for the application under consideration. You'll then move to public speaking element for each application, except for agenda item 6, which I will come to in a moment. The first 3 members of the public, including any community or amenity group, who have registered to speak for and against an application, including the agent or their representative, up to a maximum of 6, will be invited to address the committee. The applicant or their representative registers to speak, and only the first 2 members of the public who wish to speak in favour of the application may address the committee. MPs need to register in the same way and would count as one of the 6 speakers. Town and parish councils and ward members of Dorset Council who are not members of the committee and who wish to address us will be allowed to speak, provided they have given due notice. All requests have to be registered with Democratic Services by 8:30 a.m. on Monday, the 22nd of April, and each speaker is strictly limited to 3 minutes. Once we have heard from the public speakers for an application, I then close the public part of the meeting and no further interventions are allowed. It is crucial that this is adhered to, especially by the public, as this could invalidate our procedures and the decision being made. In the public participation section, if we need every item, we'll ask the officers if there are any salient points they wish to clarify. We'll then open up to members for questions and debate. In the beginning of the meeting, I request that members of the committee direct any remarks and questions to the chair, and I'll invite members to speak in turn. Please ensure that your device volume is set to 0 to maintain audio quality. And also, as we've already seen, can you please use the desk microphone to ensure you talk directly into the mic. At the end of the debate, I will take a vote by a show of hands, and the voting detail will be recorded in the minutes if 3 or more members make the necessary request. And can I remind members to state their name and their ward when they first speak on each application. Following a lengthy preamble, we now go on to the first of our applications, agenda item 6, which is POUT 2022-04113, land of Blackfield Lane, West Moors. An outline application for the erection of a church, community hall and care home with associated parking and an area for biodiversity enhancement. All matters are reserved apart from access and scale. So, yes, I would have alluded to public speaking earlier in the meeting. This is a continuation of the deliberation of this application following the site visit by members of the committee on the 17th of April. Therefore, there is no further public speaking, as all of this was done at the previous meeting in April. officer will give a brief resume of the application and the site visit before I open the debate to members. I also wish to make an apology for the use of the term fan club at the last meeting when referring to some of the members of the public. It was not meant to cause offence. It was just a slip of the tongue at the time. But Naomi, do you want to take us through the updates, please?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. The description is as noted on the slide, and a reminder that all matters are reserved except for access and scale. So the description is outline application for erection of a church and care home with associated parking and an area for biodiversity enhancement. So just as a reminder to members, this slide shows the application site in relation to the settlement boundary of West Moors, where we can see the application site outlined in red here, where my pointer is at the moment. Also, as a reminder that local plan policy BTSW8 identifies the application site as being no longer safeguarded from development. It has not been allocated for general residential development as it is adjacent to protected heathland. This is a reminder of the indicative plan that has been submitted showing the care home and the church and associated potential parking. Again, all matters are reserved except access and scale, and all other matters such as appearance, landscaping and layout would be determined under a reserved matters application if outline consent is granted. So in terms of an update, as set out in the officer report, the East Dorset area cannot demonstrate a 4-year housing land supply in line with the revised NPPF land supply requirements. However, I need to point out to members that our position in relation to the reduction to a 4-year housing land supply instead of a 5-year is currently being challenged at appeal. We don't have the outcome of those appeals at this point. But I should note in the East Dorset area, the published supply position of 3.9 years means the tilt balance in paragraph 11 of the NPPF is engaged in any event for this application. And the delivery of additional housing to meet the shortfall in supply should therefore be given significant weight as set out in the officer report. Some other updates, the points on the slide show the updates made to the officer report, which is also highlighted at the beginning of the officer report for this committee. And most of these updates were made at the March committee presentation when I provided members with an update then. But to add to that, a summary of comments from the fire service, which were received after the committee, has been added to the officer report, and also comments that were received from local residents post committee has also a summary of those have also been added to the report. And it's also to note that the comments from local residents also includes comments from their transport consultant, Origin, who did speak at the previous committee. To note, the conditions added to the officer report are listed on the slide. All of these were mentioned at the March committee, but there is an addition to the condition restricting the number of bedrooms where the height has also been restricted. So the line shall be no more than 2 stories in height is being added to that condition for to ensure it can't be more than 2 stories. As mentioned, there was a site visit. This happened on Wednesday, 17th of April last week, between the hours of 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. Members viewed the site. We also went and looked at all the junctions to Station Road, and also looked at the alternative routes that could potentially be used for the site, and drove all of these in various directions. Just to remind members, the application is for outline consent only, except for access and scale, and the main issues from consideration are principle of development, design with regards to scale only, access, highway impact and parking provision, trees, drainage, impact on local amenity, and impact on biodiversity. I thought it was worth mentioning to members that some of the issues raised in additional comments sent by local residents after the previous committee. Again, this is a summary, and summary is in section 9.5 of the officer reports, and the full comments have been available online. So some of the issues that were raised, the negative impact on ecology and that the ecological area cannot be secured, that there will be still a negative impact on road safety, and that the relocation of utility poles still does not meet the road safety requirements. Concerns that the alternative routes are unsafe for traffic. So the alternative routes that were mentioned at the previous committee are unsafe for traffic. There's concerns that traffic noise impact on neighbouring amenity, and that noise guidance is being dismissed. Concerns regarding comments from the adult social care team, and that there's evidence in their comments against the need for and location of care home. Also that the adult social care team requested for sustainable and affordable nursing care provision. Concerns in terms of the type of care, that it hasn't been secured, that there's still insufficient amenity space for future occupiers. Concerns in relation to the scale that will impact negatively on the area, and that there's only a modest change from the previous refused application, and that separation distances are unknown as it is an indicative plan, and there's still objections from the Dorset Council Landscape Officer. And also to note that the comment was made that the emerging local plan identifies the site outside the settlement boundary, and there's also procedural concerns raised, such as late consultee responses, late consultations, and that site visit should have taken place sooner. In terms of the recommendation, just to remind members what my recommendation is from the previous committee, and it's to grant permission subject to the conditions listed in the officer report, and subject to securing a legal agreement that secures the biodiversity requirements, including the management plan and stepping rights, to secure the Dorset Heathland restrictions required by the Habitats Regulations Assessment, and to secure the surface water drainage connection, which is outside of the site boundary, or for the applicant to provide proof of ownership. And again, subject to the conditions listed in the officer report. If a legal agreement was not secured, then the alternative recommendation is for a refusal, where there would be an impact on Dorset Heathlands where the mitigation is not secured, or subject to the drainage requirements as well. So if that can't be secured by legal agreement, it would result in a refusal. And that is the update, and I'm obviously happy to answer questions from members there.
Thank you very much, Naomi. We do have some other officers with us for this application. So I'll make sure I get them in the right order. Starting to Naomi's left, we have Steve Savage from Dorset Highways, Lisa Watt, who's the Associate Acoustic Consultant from WSP, who are the independent acoustic consultants. Then we have Sam Williams from the Natural Environment team and Rob Hanson from the Local Flood Authority. Is there anything any of you would like to say at this point regarding the update, or would you rather just respond to members' questions? Okay, thank you. So in that case, as I said before, there is no public speaking on this application now, as that was all carried out at our last meeting. So members, I'm straight over to you. David.
A couple of questions regarding differences between nursing home and care homes. If this was for a care home, which is what it says in the application, then it wouldn't be allowed under the Dorset Heathlands SPD, but a nursing home is. Now, the difference between the two seems to me to be very vague. I've looked online to see if there's a legal difference. And the only definition I see is that a nursing home provides care for more seriously ill people that require 24-hour nursing, rather, excuse me, rather than simply being in a care home. And I'm concerned that unless there's a particularly legal definition, it's going to be a bit difficult to enforce. And I noticed that in the officer report we've just read, there was no mention of the section 106 saying that there should be a nursing home for severely where residents are restricted from advanced dementia or physical nursing needs. So that didn't seem to be mentioned in the recommendation delegation. So I just want a little clarity, please, on what counts as nursing care as opposed to a care home, how that's going to be enforced. And one other query, which is to do with the church. It was to be a church and a community hall. That community hall element was removed. But as I understand it, churches are generally open most of the time and form a place where people can go for worship on their own or indeed in company, which again might put some pressure on the protected heathland. So again, a little clarity on what can happen at the church, how often it will be used, and who will be using it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Just as you can see on the slide before you is the diagram on from the Dorset Heathland SPD, which sets out the requirement for a C2 use class in terms of nursing homes, and that residents are severely restricted with advanced dementia and physical nursing needs. Paragraph 15.8.7 of the officer report lists the requirements required. We have done an appropriate assessment as part of the Habitats Regulations assessment, and that sets out a requirement for the care to be 24-hour nursing care residents. And so by that nature, they would be likely to be restricted in terms of their ability to move beyond the site. And that has been set out in the HRA, which is available online, sorry, the appropriate assessment, which is available online, again, in the officer report. And my recommendation does say approval subject to securing requirements of the HRA within the legal agreement. So the exact wording of that, I don't know just yet, but it is a standard practice for us to restrict type of care when a nursing home is beside the Dorset Heathland to ensure it is in line with the requirements of the Dorset Heathland SPD. Should I continue regarding church?
Please.
So the church, just one moment, I'll get the right slide. So the use, and there is a condition for it only to be this use, would be F1F, which is for or in connection with public worship or religious instruction. It would be for general worship and religious instruction. We wouldn't condition it to be for a particular denomination. The intended users of the church and the site is the Plymouth Brethren group. My understanding of their practice is there's roughly 3 services per week, usually 2 evenings during the week, which tends to be Bible readings or various other related activities, and the 6 a.m. service on a Sunday morning, which I believe they refer to as the Lord's Prayer, and is their main practice. So they are the intended users, but we wouldn't condition it to be solely used by the Plymouth Brethren group. It is for F1F, which is for or in connection with public worship or religious instruction.
So that there could be people coming and going throughout the day, throughout the week.
Potentially, yes.
And 6 a.m. service.
6 a.m. service on the Sunday morning.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
There has been the noise impact assessments, which we can, we're happy to answer questions on. So noise impact assessment submitted by the residents and local residents, and a noise impact assessment submitted by the applicant. which has been reviewed by WSP independent consultants. And from the review we have, the 6 a.m. service wouldn't cause harm to an extent that would warrant refusal. I think we can answer specific questions on that if you have any.
No, I hear what you say. I'm a little. I think if someone was driving past my house at 6 a.m. every Sunday morning, I might get a little stream of cars. That might cause a nuisance. But I hear what you say.
We'll move on to our next speaker. Okay. Can I remind members, name and ward, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Shane Bartlett, ward member for Wimborne Minster. Madam Chairman, the application we've got before us is on one side, but with two distinct different developments that are going to take place on the site. I wonder if I could get an understanding around whether or not this morning, when we determine this decision, is it possible to split those two aspects of the application in front of us in terms of the church and the care home? Is it possible to make a decision on one, on both, but can one be accepted and one refused? Is that possible to make that split decision?
Thank you, Chair. So, in principle, yes, you are entitled to approve part of an application before you and refuse a different part. So that's the principle. Whether you can in a particular case or not depends on the circumstances of the application, whether the two parts are genuinely separate and not dependent on each other, whether approving one and refusing the other would alter the harms and benefit balancing exercise that you need to undertake, whether there would be any consequences flowing in terms of works which might take place, which wouldn't need the planning permission, which wouldn't need planning consent, but would nevertheless need to be considered as an impact as a consequence of refusing one and approving another. My understanding, and I'm sure Naomi will advise you if I've got this wrong, but my understanding is that none of those would apply. So they're separate uses. The harms and benefits aren't interdependent, so you would be able to assess them as separate components. So I think on this application, yes, you would, if you were minded and you had sound planning reasons for doing so, you could refuse part and accept.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of questions. Thank you to the officer for that clarification. Thank you. So I'd like to move to our site visit in Station Road, where there was a good deal of concern around the junction and the visibility displays that were on that junction. My understanding is that in terms of collision data, there is very little, no collision data on that junction. So just about established person, do we know how long those records go back, please?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members, members of the public. In answer to your question, Councillor Bartlett, there have been 3 collisions since 1998. They're actually, none of them are related to the junction. They're on Station Road themselves, and they're basically as a result of poor driver behaviour. So to confirm, nothing to do with vehicles turning into or out of the junction. I could give you specific details if you would like specific details, but that's the important point to bear in mind.
Thank you. As I say, there is obviously concern within the local community around that junction. And I'd just like to understand from the officers whether, if this application was approved, is it possible through Section 106 money or 278 highways agreement to allow for speed mitigation on that junction? I know there's been some talk around 21-hour speed limit, but would it be possible to put a raised table in, which would incorporate pedestrian crossing if needed, on that junction, which also had to accommodate the school, and we noticed that the parents and the children were crossing that road, busy road.
Councillor, the applicant hasn't suggested that a speed table be provided, and as a highway authority, we haven't identified that as a requirement due to the traffic levels or the traffic generation. So as you know, with planning, we need to have a justification to ask for highway improvements. There are none in this instance, as far as we're concerned. We have tactile crossing facilities on Station Road and on the avenue to facilitate crossing from the Memorial car park into the site, into the school, which is obviously close to the junction. A TRO, a traffic regulation order, would be separate to the planning procedure, would normally be something that the town council would be pursuing. My understanding is that we have a speed control camera in close proximity to the junction, which, whilst it may or may not have a camera within it which is operating, it does act as a deterrent. So I think the answer to your question there is that we haven't asked for it. I don't think we could justify we ask for a speed table there. We don't tend to put traffic calming in isolation, particularly on B-class routes through settlements. So it wouldn't be an isolated plateau, if you like. It would need to be part of a scheme for the whole of the BA 3072, I'd suggest.
Thank you. Madam Chair, just so I can get it clear in my head, while it's not within this application as an outline application, if this application was approved today, would it be something that could be returned to in the reserved matters application that then comes forward?
Chair, no, I would suggest it couldn't, Councillor.
Members. Robin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Robin Cookstown, Elmdale Ward. A couple of things I wanted to ask. We've touched on already, I think Councillor took, particularly the question of firming up the description. We did have the update at the previous meeting that it is now a nursing home as opposed to a care home. Although the words care home still appear within the document, I'm sure that's just something to be amended in the paperwork here. But the modelling, if you like, the modelling for traffic, traffic seems to be the big issue here, particularly having visited the site and seen the issues. That modelling was done on the basis of it being a care home. Now, I don't know, somebody said is there a big difference or isn't much difference? I think there could be a difference in terms of the numbers of staff, the ratio of staff to patients, inmates, or whatever you want to call them, residents. The lack of movement by the residents because they're not likely to be using vehicles. So I wonder whether when we did our assessments, whether there should be a different look at that because it is a nursing home. That's point one. I have an answer to that, and then I'll come on to my other question.
Councillor Cook. When we do traffic modelling, we're looking at the TRICS programme, which I probably bored you with before, but it's basically a comparative analysis of traffic figures across the whole of England, which have been submitted by local authorities. The actual process of inputting the data has a number of criteria. Care home is a generic criteria within TRICS. There isn't a separate one for nursing homes. So the data that has been provided by the applicant, by our own analysis and by the objectors has been based on the use as a care home. And we have no other data available within TRICS that we could base our prediction on. And I would stress this is a prediction. So there will be an element of fluctuation between the two. I would like to think this is the worst case scenario that we've looked at. And as I relayed to you at the last meeting, traffic flow, the actual generation from the site is low and it's at off-peak periods. And that's the important point to bear in mind with regards to that junction. Give you an answer, probably not the answer you particularly wanted.
Okay, well, thank you for that. No doubt about it's a very constrained site in the sense of getting to it. There's more than one exit though. other than Avenue Road. There are the two other exits that we also drove through. And you mentioned, was it 3 collisions? Chairman, through you, Steve, was it 3 collisions
Correct.
since 19? Is that just the, forgive me if I'm, is it just the Avenue and Station Road?
It's Station Road itself. There's no collision data on the avenue at all.
Okay, what about the other 2 exits that we looked at? Because they could be used as an alternative. Any data on those?
Just bear with me, council. I will just check the collision data now. There are none on any of the side roads in the vicinity of the site, and in, as I say, on Station Road, we have 3. We have one which is just below Deanwood Avenue, which was a slight accident in 2019. With a cyclist listening to the music through headphones with hood up, was overtaken by a car and ended up with a car's bonnet. The none related to the use of the junctions is the important thing. Thanks very much.
Well, I'm trying to really get my head around this traffic thing, and now having been on the site visit was really, really useful. Actually, I don't know what members thought. It really was good to get out there and go in the detail that we saw. I'm trying to get my head around this traffic movement, which seems to be flagging up in a lot of the comments we've had in the previous meeting in the paperwork. Very residential. I hadn't been down the back part there. I was amazed at the number of properties right down to the edge of where the proposed development is. But obviously, you've no way of knowing how many residents are going to be in those properties and how many vehicles they're going to have. So the number of cars using that road could vary anywhere, any time, from maybe double the number we've got now or half the number, depending on the residency situation, which will change over time. So that's why I find it difficult to get my head around in terms of traffic movements associated with this particular project. I'll hold that one there, if I may, because I've got a further question related to traffic that could be also to other environmental issues. If the church, as it's now, not Church Community Hall, do we have any data on the environmental impact or whatever, noise or traffic at any other sites, or in Dorset area? We'll use Dorset as an example for this particular group, the Plymouth Brethren.
We need to determine this application on its own merits. We have noise impact assessments from local residents and the applicant, which again has been assessed by WSP, our independent consultants. So we wouldn't consider noise on other sites. We are considering this application on its own merits.
All right, I'll hold it there, Chair, if I may. Reserve the right to come back. Thank you.
Want to introduce yourself this time? Sorry, I should have asked you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my name's David Took. I'm from Cranbourne Old Ward. Just on the traffic and the collisions, most councillors have got access to a thing called Collisions Explorer, which shows reported accidents. I've sat in a number of parish council meetings where they've been discussing accidents, and there's been nothing on Collision Explorer, but local knowledge is, yeah, there's been half a dozen things here and there on these junctions, and they never make it through to the actual record. So I'm a little wary of the official information, which I understand is all that the officers really have. And they're never going to know about these little minor things that nobody's ever reported, and quite possibly hasn't resulted in any particular vehicle damage. Maybe just a very sudden braking that's jolted somebody or whatever. I'm wary of this idea of no damage. I was on the site visit, and the roads leading to the site are all very narrow, quite congested, parked cars on either side. The junction, if you're turning left into these roads, then they're all a slight cutback. You tend to swing out a little wide and then cut back to your left, just because of the angle of the road. I just felt it was. I mean, I've only been driving for half a century, so, you know, and 1,000 miles a week at some point. So my experience of driving is reasonably strong. And some of these I would probably avoid if I could. I just wondered, do we have any comments on close near misses, minor damage that may be anecdotally reported or locally reported and known about, but not necessarily make it through to the official statistics?
You, Chair. Look, the simple answer, Councillor, is no. The Collision Explorer that you refer to identifies injury-related accidents, obviously graded from slight to loss of life. So the answer is no. And there will no doubt be bumps and scrapes, if you like, for, I've suggested, roads enforcement, which actually provides that. What I would say with regards to the junctions and the alternative routes, if you like, is that the Manual for the Streets particularly does mention this. It describes driver behaviour as being not fixed, but it's influenced by the environment. I think all of us as drivers, we probably, when we use junctions, we pretty quickly recognise which ones aren't as good as others. We recognise the geometry, the lack of the actual radii, if you like, of the carriageway. And we should all be driving accordingly. It's a reasonable expectation to expect all drivers to adhere to the highway code. So we would moderate our speed when we enter the junction, when we exit the junction, and the like. The side roads are narrower than the avenue. That's fair. But they're not of a width where you can't drive down them safely. I mean, you saw evidence of parked cars along the side roads on your site visits, and it probably led to the minibus having to slow and perhaps give way for other cars to come along. Again, you probably heard me say that on-street parking is good traffic calming. So I would suggest that the side roads are appropriate. The fact that they serve, I estimate, over 100 dwellings is such that no collisions, is evidence that they are appropriate and suitable for use.
That's your question.
To an extent. I take the point very much about people, residents, locals get to know the junctions around their homes. Of course, what we have here are people visiting residents in a nursing home who may well not be familiar with the area and will take 2 or 3 visits to get familiar. And because nursing care is something that needs to be available, and I take that point, they may well be coming from a fair distance away, not be familiar at all with this area. So that might make these junctions a little bit trickier, certainly in the first few weeks while they're visiting their relatives or friends. So and of course, because it's a nursing home, and I hate to say this, but there will be turnover. There will be new people coming, and there will sadly be old people leaving. So you've got a turnover of residents, and you've got a turnover, therefore, of visitors. So you're constantly going to get a stream of people who are unfamiliar with these junctions. And I think that's something that, it's a question, was that turnover of people something that was taken into consideration in your calculations?
My calculations, the calculations for trip generation, of course, don't include that. But if you're talking about a driver perception, if you like, of a road, you're quite right. If somebody's new to a road, again, it's reasonable to expect them to drive with an element of care and caution because they're unaware of their surroundings. It's the familiarity which tends to lead to people driving with less care, greater speeds and the like. And unfortunately, it tends to be local drivers who are the ones who take greater risks, if you like, with regards to speed or going by parked cars and the like. But I take your point with regards to the lack of familiarity and the alternative routes that can be utilised to exit the site. I think the issue here it's not turning into the road junction of the avenue. which is potentially the issue. It's the turning out and the visibility to the right. And you heard me say at the last committee that it doesn't comply with the guidance provided by Manual for Streets. Now, Manual for Streets is not a statutory document and that it provides legislation. It is purely guidance. So my recommendation to you for an approval was that the applicant has indicated they're prepared to take the utility pole away, which then improves the visibility at that junction, not to the guidance provided by Manual for Streets, but it is a betterment. So from a highway authority perspective, we were looking at this saying, well, the junction isn't brilliant, but there's going to be an improvement to it, which is a big plus in terms of safety. The site has been allocated or it's been identified within the local plan for development. What sort of development could we, in highway terms, think was preferable on there, which generated low amounts of traffic? And that's why we have the care home, and that's why, or the care home, nursing home. That's why we have a place of worship here. They are traffic generators which occur outside the traditional AM and PM peaks, outside of the 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the morning and 5 to 6 in the evening. We've heard that the Plymouth Brethren themselves, if they are the end user, will be going in there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the traffic, obviously the flow on the network is very low, 6 o'clock in the morning. So the actual traffic generator, you wouldn't wish to separate two uses, is not the church. The care home, because you've got associated staff movements and shift patterns and like, will be the one that will generate the traffic. But again, the traffic movements are predicted to be low. We're talking about 10 vehicles here in the AM and PM peaks, which is 1 every 6 minutes. It's really low. Work, the people who are going to the care home actually working there, if they feel uncomfortable using the junction that we have used, they will be the ones who pretty soon determine that if they're going north, they're going through Deanwood Avenue, or there's an alternative route through Ashurst Road to the south, if they feel uncomfortable. But the fact there have been no collisions recorded there would indicate that drivers do exercise care when they use that junction, or they take an alternative route. So I just want to make it very clear the traffic levels are low here. With regards to the junctions themselves and the geometry, if you feel that it's tight to turn in and out, I would have to advise you that that wouldn't be a sustainable reason for refusal on highway safety grounds. Okay, the fact that people would exercise care and caution at a junction would mean that that's what they should be reasonably expected to do. Probably waffled a bit there, councillor, but hopefully I've answered your question or your question.
Thank you for the answer.
Mike Dye.
Mike Dye, Westmoors and Figurative Cross. I'm afraid the site visit didn't convince me either that the highway impact would be acceptable. Lots of reasons. To start with, the parents picking up children from the schools using the Memorial Hall car park, but there's no guarantee that that would be available forever and a day. Most people know that the type of speed camera on the station road doesn't work. They could replaced by more modern ones, and that isn't one of those, and everybody knows it. The junctions onto Station Road, the radii are such that larger vehicles would have difficulty in getting out onto Station Road without curbing. They would have to pull right over, I guess, onto the opposite carriageway to exit. As has already been said, the roads leading to the site are excessively narrow. The minibus only just got through and had to drive very, very slowly. So anything bigger than a minibus would struggle. I'm guessing the residents know when bin day is, so they leave it clear, but they're not going to be able to guess about large vehicles getting onto the proposed development. I think that's about it, really. As already been said, the visibility displays that are going to be provided don't really comply. They're not ideal, but as has been said, it's advisory. So I don't think I will be able to support this development on the highway grounds, despite what the report says. Thank you.
Then you wish to come back?
Madam Chairman, Councillor Shane Bartlett, Alderman Minister. Just on, I don't want to move to slide 21, but on slide 21, I'm a member of the previous meeting on the planning considerations, initial fire risk, that's pertaining to the building. And obviously it's an outline application when it comes to reserve matters, and the building will be planned and will be built out conforming to fire regulations within local planning laws that stand at the moment. But I just wondered if we could have an update and understanding around fire mitigation against heathland fires, because of the landscape and ecological management plan. I'm just going to have some detail on that because the care home will abut a heathland. We know that we are exposed to heathland fires in this county, and we know that those fires move very, very rapidly, and they can be on a 100, 200, 300 yard wide frontage, which present quite a significant health and safety issue to that care home, and in order to get it evacuated in time, just wonder whether you have an understanding around that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. Yeah, so we did have a consultation to the Dorset Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Service, and they did respond after the previous committee. I'll go to their response in a moment. I did ask them specifically regarding heathland fires as requested. So the application site is adjacent to the heathland, and it's the Holton Westmoors SSI. It is owned by the Ministry of Defence, and it is maintained by a group called the Amphibian and Reptile Conservation Group, who specifically maintain the site in order to preserve amphibian and reptile species, protected species. My understanding of wildfires and heathland fires, some of the biggest issues are land ownership and a lack of maintenance. So when you have several landowners and lands not being maintained, that's when you start to have higher risk of heathland fires in terms of overgrowth up to boundaries, residential boundaries, potentially, if that is the case. So ownership and maintenance is one of the elements that adds to the risk. The fire service have responded, and their response focuses on 2 points. The first one is the spread of fire from the building itself to the heathland, and then causing a heathland fire. And they say the risk of fire spreading from the building to the heathland should be managed through the risk assessment process, both during construction and in occupation. This includes adequate controls of any burning bonfires which are discouraged. And the provision of automatic water suppression and sprinkler protection should mitigate this risk during occupation. A suitable fire defendable line is recommended around any building adjacent to a vegetated area as a protective measure. I'll come back to that point in a moment. Just moving on to the risk of the fire spreading from the heathland to the building, and obviously vulnerable occupants of this particular use. The fire service has said the risk of fire spreading from heathland to an adjacent building should be considered within the emergency evacuation and business continuity plan for any building. So it's a management and fire risk scenario. I did go back to the fire service and ask them what would be an appropriate defendable line. I have marked out on the slide for you now the distances on the indicative plan. They're anything from 5.5 to 10 meters around the building, and the fire service response was it depends on each scenario. They would review it on a case-by-case basis. I think in terms of fire risk of the adjacent heathland is a consideration, and the height of the building, the vegetation on the boundary. So they couldn't give me an answer because we don't have a proposed layout. If I can point out one more thing. Back to this slide, you can see within the SSI, adjacent to the site, there is a track located along here, which is beside the boundary, which would provide a form of fire break. Whether or not that's adequate, I don't know. The fire service haven't provided that information, but there is a track located adjacent to the site boundary.
Does that answer your questions?
In part, Madam Chair, if I can come back. Yeah. So I'm no expert in the field, but I don't think that does warrant a decision. I remember in '76 when the fire in the New Forest jumped the road is there, jumped the end of the road, and the gravel hill had jumped the road, gravel hill, I think at one point. So yeah, what I'm taking from that then is that this is the outside application, and the detail that would come in the reserve grants application should this be determined today and passed today. And the fire service, who obviously the experts in this field and deal with this all the time, they would have the necessary experience in order to accommodate the evacuation plan for building of those vulnerable residents. That's what I'm taking from that.
Yes, so the evacuation plan for residents, it needs to be, as the fire service said, in the business continuity plan for any building. And I would expect that as a standard procedure for any care home. Also to note the condition 15 for the landscape and ecological management plan, we have asked in my update in March for details regarding how fire prevention from the adjacent heathlands, so in terms of vegetation, etc. We've asked for that to be included prior to commencement of any development.
Is there anything you wish to add to what Naomi said, or she covered it all?
I think you're going to, yeah.
Thank you. So it'd be risky if I didn't start talking about flooding within a planning meeting. So previously when we had the presentation at last meeting, I think it was like 39. With respect to farm water capacity and location and the future risk of sewage overspill in the residential location and how would West Water address that. I'm not sure what the history is within that surrounding area. We keep on putting developments in alongside residential that exist. We know often the infrastructure isn't sufficient to accommodate that. I know that sewage pollution is down to the Environment Agency. And I know that often we come to planning meetings and we're told that it's local water companies like West Water that actually have responsibilities for this, but it is somewhat unnerving, I always find on a planning committee, that we have a lack of any decision making or authority within this. I just wondered what the history within the site was, please.
Yes, so we can see the site here. There's the Blackfield Lane pumping station located over here. My understanding is the houses in this area connect to this pumping station. Wessex Water were consulted and they said they had no objection. The summary of the officer report notes that surface water disposal to the foul sewer is not permitted, which is not proposed in terms of surface water. And that Wessex Water would need to review the foul sewer network should permission be granted due to capacity issues. So they have raised the capacity issues, but they still have no objection to the development. And the Environment Agency have also requested a condition regarding the foul sewer requirements for the site. So there is a condition in the officer report. I'm just getting up their response. Apologies, I just need to find it in the officer report. Okay, so in paragraph 1569 of the officer report, it says the Environment Agency have also been consulted. While they raised initial concerns due to lack of information in relation to foul drainage, they have raised no objection to the proposed, and as it is confirmed, it is proposed to connect to the public main sewer, and this is subject to a condition in relation to foul drainage at reserved matter stage, which has been added to the officer report. Do you want the condition? So it's condition 3, prior to the determination of any reserved matters application, a scheme to dispose of foul drainage, which will include a connection point to the existing public foul sewer network, will be submitted to and approved in writing to the local planning authority. The scheme shall be implemented as approved.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just referring back to the site visit we had, and within our original planning meeting, it was detailed, I think it was slide 37, the ditch that's there that would take on some of the surface water management of the site wasn't in the ownership and permission hadn't been given yet. I'm just wondering, do we know who maintains that? Or when we did the site visit, it didn't look like it had been touched for decades. It was very overgrown. We didn't get a good look at it. Where I could observe it from where we stood on a site visit, it looked like it received no maintenance or anything. I just wondered, what maintenance is around that? Who actually owns it? I don't necessarily need to know who owns it, but is it being maintained? And is there any history of flooding resulting from either of those ditches?
The existing ditch, which is proposed to discharge surface water to, is outside the site. And so that will be within the ownership of the landowner to the south of the site. And it's riparian responsibilities to maintain and manage those ditches. In terms of, so on the actual site, it would be the developer's responsibility to look after their own ditches. So those new ditches that they're proposing, they would have to maintain, and that would be part of, they would have to submit their finished maintenance plan if this is agreed. And they would look after their own ditches, but yeah, the ditch to the south is the landowner's responsibility. And current situation.
So in terms of the existing ditches, there is, I'm just trying to get an understanding around the legalities of it and whether they are, the riparian owners are forced to maintain that. Force is the wrong word, I can't think of the word I want to use, but there is a duty of obligation or an understanding they have to maintain those ditches, or is there any legal comeback on them if they don't? I just want to get in my head that there is a security to the local residential population, that we're not creating an issue that further down the road it could be a flooding issue for the local residential population.
Yeah, the case with any landowner who has a ditch, it's their responsibility to look after it, and if it happens that an issue occurs due to that, then there are parts of the flood risk team can enforce that for the landowner to actually maintain. It's easier to control the management of the ditch within the site, because that is simply the responsibility of the developer, and you would go to them and say you need to clean the ditch out. But downstream, it's other people's responsibility, whoever is the landowner of that site to the south.
Just to add to Robert's comments, the 106, the recommendation part of that is that the landowner to the south, private landowner to the south, has to sign up to they need to be party to the legal agreement in terms of the allowing and maintaining the connection. So they need to be part of that. Or I've added the clause that the applicant provides proof of ownership of that land, as they may buy the land if permission was granted. So it would either be in the applicant's ownership or the private landowner to the south would be party to the legal agreement that we require.
If they are unable to secure that ownership, then does that then come back to this committee? Where do we go from that in terms of determining this site?
And that would be alternative recommendation B.
Page 67 of the report.
So if we couldn't secure the drainage connection within the legal agreement, that would then form a reason for refusal. It wouldn't go back to committee. The application would be refused if we couldn't secure that.
My apologies, I've been ahead of myself. Sorry, should be ahead around everything. Okay, thank you for the answer. I just want a very brief answer as well. Are we, as a planning authority, do we have a complete understanding on this site in terms of flooding? I know it's within the report. We tend to be reliant on surface water draining from the site and mitigation of flooding on the assessment of the developer, but do we have, as a planning authority, an understanding about that risk independently? It is the intensity usually well draining. I just would like to secure in my own mind that we do have a fully understanding over the flooding on that site. And after that, Madam Chairman, I'm prepared to make a proposal if you've got other speakers.
So we have, I mean, we do review the applicant's own drainage strategy and flood risk assessment, but we do make our own assessment of that site. So we have carried out site visits. So we've looked at, I mean, the site is flood zone 1, so it's not modelled to be at risk of fluvial flooding, although it's also surrounded by ordinary watercourses, so there's ditches all sides. So those ditches aren't actually modelled as part of the EA flood risk modelling exercise. So we also we got the applicant to do some surveying work along those ditches. They looked at the levels of the land either side of those ditches, and it was because the levels outside of the site are lower than the site itself, we would expect any flooding from those ditches to actually flood the adjacent sites. In terms of surface water risk, we use the EA mapping, and that indicates that any sort of the majority of surface water flooding will actually occur on the north of the site, which is the area which is to remain undeveloped. And then groundwater, we're expecting to be high in that location. So we've said that any attenuation features have to be lined so that the groundwater doesn't enter into those features. And if groundwater does come up above the ground, you would then expect those groundwater to sort of accumulate in the areas where it's modelled surface water flood risk. But yes, we have made our own assessment of it. The applicant has shown that they have a viable and deliverable surface water management strategy. They're discharging or proposing to discharge surface water at Greenfield rates into that ditch to the south. We've also reviewed, so we have no records of the actual site flooding, no official records, although we've had anecdotal stories that some surface water does flow across that site into the neighbouring road. But the proposed surface water management features should manage those if there is any surface water on the site. And yeah, so the only evidence of flooding that we've actually seen is on the adjacent sites downstream. So we're aware that there is quite significant flooding to the south of the site. And so that it is important that any surface water that is drainage is installed for this development. It needs to hold those flows back so that we don't make flooding any worse downstream. But the applicant has shown that a viable solution is possible.
Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah, thank you. I'm making a proposal, Madam Chairman, you've got other speakers.
No one has indicated, so
Okay, Madam Chairman. So if I go to preamble as to why I'm coming to the view that I'm coming to, but I think members know that we've walked into, for the last 40 years probably, a position in Dorset of being a retirement county. I think we're something like 8 years now at the tipping point that we've got more retirees in the county, we've got working population. Therefore, we have seen increasingly a need for care homes, and this in the complaints of the NPPF for care homes and the litigation against Heathman, it is easier for developers to bring forward care homes that are against peatland areas. This is also a site that's within the local plan for development, and I take on board the highways officer and his comments about the fact that in order to put a development on this site, it was beneficial to bring one forward that didn't have too much of a detrimental impact on local highway infrastructure, particularly the junction on Station Road and the Avenue. So with that said, I'm proposing that we would accept the care home as per the officer in this outline application as per the officer's recommendation. But however, the church, which I do have an issue with the church, so I'm going to ask that we actually split this application site. My reasoning around the church is I think it would have a detrimental impact from the church, it would have a detrimental impact from the church on the existing residential settlement. I think through highway impact with additional car movements at social hours and potentially on the Sunday in particular, with potentially noise and nuisance impact on the immediate surrounding residential housing. The need for an additional church or place of worship in the vicinity, I don't think has been proven. And the application for the church principle with no wider community benefit. Madam Chairman, that's my proposal.
just trying to make a note of what you said. We're going to come back to officers. Do you have any comments on the proposal that's being put before you?
It's just to note we do have the noise information, we do have the evidence. I have a bit of a concern about reason for refusal in terms of impact on neighbouring amenity, because that has been assessed. I don't know if there's any questions we can answer on that first, but it's just to raise my concern about that as a reason for refusal for the church element.
I think I'm going to ask a question on that. There is a planning appeal that was dismissed a few years ago in Burndown for a similar application where the inspector, if I just pull up the where the application was refused in September 2009 on grounds of noise, disturbance and vehicular movements affecting neighbouring occupiers. But the appeal inspector did not consider the use to be detrimental to the immunity of adjoining occupiers per se, but opined that the requirement of the user to meet at 6 AM on a Sunday with associated traffic movements was potentially harmful to the immunity of adjoining occupiers. At this early hour, the residents could reasonably expect a peaceful and quiet enjoyment of their properties. He therefore dismissed the appeal. Now, I'm aware that there was no traffic information supplied at that time, either by the applicant or anyone else. But I wonder if I could have a response to that, maybe from yourself and from our traffic consultant. Consultant, I should say.
In terms of, I mean, you are correct. As I've mentioned before, we didn't look at other church sites. We have to determine this application on its own merits. We have evidence before us in terms of the noise impact assessments. The inspector in the appeal that you do refer to in paragraph 10 does say, in the absence of any traffic survey evidence from either party, my view on traffic levels is based on my general experience of such matters. So we do have the evidence before us. And again, in planning terms, we have to determine each application on its own merits. And I'll defer to Lisa from WSP to provide more detail.
We should specifically concentrate on 6 AM and the impact of that same time of day.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, as you mentioned with the previous application, there was no evidence presented either way for the inspector to consider in terms of noise impacts. And in this situation, we've actually got three noise impact assessment reports. We've got the one from the applicant, the residents, and one from myself, our company, as independent review of those. Our review of that concluded that the impact would be of marginal significance, specifically pointing to that 6 AM kind of early morning, late nighttime impact.
So you wanted to say something about proven need.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Bartlett referred to the lack of proven need. I just wanted to say that in the absence of a policy requirement requiring an applicant to demonstrate need, it would be a reason for refusal. It's simply whether the application is acceptable on its merits, or whether parts are acceptable on their merits. And as far as I'm aware, there is no policy requirement in this location for need to be shown.
Do you want to come back, Shane?
Yes, thank you. I take on board what the officer said, and I know that actually call for service in this country is traditionally done through bell ringing. I mean, in this town, I get people that move into the town and they complain about the bell ringing on a Tuesday night. Camp Knowledge here and there. It's some of the largest structure in the town with Twin Towers, the only church in Dorset with Twin Towers, so which John Hankins would be that. And the fact is that I think these types of churches do have an impact on the local vicinity. In terms of proven need, what we heard from the residents that were speaking, I'm sure that what I remember was that their view wasn't a need for a church within the vicinity. Also, when we're dealing with the application in front of us, we know that we endorse it. We have a constrained land supply. In terms, I think it's something like 83% of the land in Dorset you can't build on because SSI, ARNB, Greenbelt, floodplain, whatever. And whether I think we have to take into consideration as a planning committee best use of land when we're determining applications, and I'm not convinced that the church would do best use of land in this instance. As I say, I have no issue with the care home, but whether this would be an application type of thing with more housing to meet our housing requirement is another question. And so there, I still have concern around whether a church on this side is the best use of the land, and sort of the other reasons I've given as well, which I've got concerns about. Thank you. I'm probably in trouble.
Yeah. Just as in the officer report and as presented, it cannot be allocated for general housing because of the proximity to the heathlands. So the church use would be an acceptable use within 400 metres of the heathland, but not general housing, as is the C2 care home use.
I take the opposite point, but I still believe that that aspect of the application side could be better to put better use for the community, for the wider community. And it comes back to my view on using the limited amount of land side supply we've got for the best benefits of the residential population of Dorset.
I think the difficulty that we have is we need policy and planning law base support the elements of your recommendation, either for and against. So you're making this decision. So we need plenty reasons for the part of your proposal that needs to be granted, and we need good reasons for the refusal part of your application. And at the moment, I'm not convinced I've got one. I think Bill wants to say something as well now.
Thank you, Chair. So just in response to Councillor Bart's point about best use of land and taking into account what Naomi said, planning isn't finding what you consider is the best use of land. Everyone will have different views about what the best use of land is in a particular location. It's simply whether it's acceptable in terms of policy and material considerations, whether the use before you is acceptable, then they may well, some of you may well think that there are better uses, but that would be trying to look for an application which isn't yet before you. So it's this application on its own merits. And sticking with the chair said, and to possibly help Councillor Bartlett out with reasons, certainly for the element he was thinking was acceptable, it is possible for you to adopt the officer's reasoning as it relates to the care home as your reasoning as you would for any other application where you were in agreement with the officer's recommendation. But you would need to say that in this context. And if you don't agree with that reasoning, then you do need reasons for why you think it's acceptable. And then absolutely, as the chair said, you need to formulate robust reasons for refusal, which are robust.
Madam Chairman, I agree with the officer's recommendations laid out for care homes, as I said originally. Is it possible then, in terms of determining this today, to accept the care home and the officer's recommendations around the care home, but to defer the church site? Is that possible or not?
Yes. Thanks, Chair. I mean, of course, deferral is an option which is open to members in the normal way, but I would ask that there would have to be a good reason for deferral, and a reason why it would normally be because you don't have all of the information that you need before you to reach a determination. So you'd have to explain why you consider that you're unable to make a decision about the church element today, and how a deferral would help. What you would need, what information you would need in order to come back at a later date and make that decision.
It's because I thank you, Madam Chairman, I still haven't heard through the debate we've had and within the report what actual benefit using that site to bring forward the church. I still haven't heard what benefit there is for local unit that the local community have voiced their opinions that they didn't want a church on the site. And as I said, I think in terms of using the limited amount of development land that you've got in Dorset, that I'm not convinced that this is the best use of land. Whether that is sufficient planning reasoning for you or not, it's the challenge. I don't know, but that's my feeling on it.
Let me respond to that, and then David wants to speak.
Excuse me. I just wanted to bring it back to the consideration for this committee has to be, does this application comply with the policies and development plan? And or are there any other material considerations? So I think that question of are there specific benefits to the scheme? I think the key question is, does this proposal comply with policies and development plan? You've heard the advice of officers that it does, and that there's no other considerations such as to warrant refusal. So that's our position on it.
Yeah, it's just that to add to what Anna said, there's no policy requiring that the development here provides a community benefit or a specific community benefit. So in the absence of that, I don't think that can be reason for refusal.
Leave you time to think, David.
I'd just like to come back to this nursing home as opposed to care home issue. We heard earlier that the Habitats Regulations Assessment HRA is referred to in the officer recommendation. But that HRA, as far as I can determine, doesn't provide the requirement for a nursing home rather than a care home. The Dorset Heathlands SPD does, but I've not found anywhere in the HRA that references the Heathlands SPD. It references the one for Poole Harbour catchment, but I'm not sure it references the actual Dorset Heathlands SPD, which is the one that would require this to be a nursing home. So I think the recommendation there is certainly a bit weak. That's quite specific. But the officer recommendation says delegate in order to, and it talks about comply with the HRA, but does the HRA actually echo those words? Because I can't find it.
If members are not happy with the recommendation, I can change it in line with that. I need a moment to check the HRA with the appropriate assessment to see the exact wording in there. Well, I do need to check it, but I'm pretty sure it says 24-hour. I think it refers to close care, and there's some confusion over the terms because the SPD does refer to close care, but it should be saying nursing care. So hence the officer report refers to nursing care, and the recommendation, I believe, can be amended if that's what members wish, so that we can specify the type of care within that recommendation to ensure it's secured in the legal agreement.
I think that would be the minimum that we would require if we were to pass this.
If we can come up with suitable wording as proposer for the care home element, would you be willing to accept that wording?
Could you just run it by me again, Ruby?
It's about tightening up the usage of the care stroke nursing home. So can you put back up that slide that showed the within the 400 metre buffer?
Yeah.
It would be tightening up the recommendation to include the wording that's within the red dotted circle. Yep. So would you be willing to accept that? What I suggest then is that we take a 5-minute recess, because I think we're all getting a little bit weary anyway. We can go on, good hour and a half to give the officers time to come up with some suitable wording on that element. And then we'll come back and continue the discussion. So 5-minute comfort break, everybody, please.
enjoyed to touch it.
Shane, you had something that you wanted wordsmithing on. You've had some discussions. Where are we now?
Thank you much. And yeah, it was clarification from the officer. So my proposal is that through the highway impact and traditional calm movements, that unsafe hours professionals under particular with the potential for noise nuisance impact on the immediate surrounding residents' housing, and to add that under the NPPF 128, sufficient use of land taking into account and identifying need for different use of housing and other forms of development and the availability of land suitable to accommodate it. And on that basis, Madam Chairman, happy to accept the care home and not to accept the church on the proposal. Thank you.
So you're still proposing a split decision, grant of the care home and refusal of the church.
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Does that include the updated conditions and the section 106 that we covered earlier?
It does, Madam Chairman, yes.
Okay, is there a seconder, please? Barry, do you wish to speak?
Yes, can I speak? Barry Orange, St Leonard's and Ardson, Moors Valley. I've got a copy of an email here from Lloyd Squibb, who is the project manager in Highways. Apparently, back in June 2023, there was a survey done on Station Road to Torah Crossing, and the survey met the criteria. So what I'm proposing, an amendment to what Councillor Bartlett said, that the applicant, if this is going to be approved, then the applicant makes a contribution towards the crossing.
Okay, it's not, please.
Madam Chair, the problem here, Councillor, is that the provision of the crossing across Station Road isn't directly related to the development in front of us. To justify it, we would need to say that pedestrian movements from the proposed development would need people crossing Station Road, and I suggest it doesn't. So I don't think that's a reasonable request to make of the applicants.
Can I just ask in relation to that, does this application come under the duties to make a SIL payment? Because that has a wider usage.
Yes, nursing homes are still liable, yes, it is.
So that's a decision that could be made elsewhere in the future about diverting some of the SIL money towards that project. That it being conditioned as part of section 106, and it's not directly linked to this application.
Potentially, yes.
I think that might be the.
Sorry, can you just clarify that so it's clear in my own head? I understand that still.
The application is subject to SIL.
Yeah.
There is much wider allocation of SIL monies within the local community for various projects, rather than one that has to be tied to a particular planning application. There is local flexibility in the choice of projects. So therefore, there is the opportunity potentially for the local community, whether it's the parish or the board members, to push to use some of that SIL money allocation towards that crossing. So if we can't do it through section 106, you could do it through the SIL route, but it wouldn't be part of
So you're
the
saying
decision today.
it can't be done under a 106 then?
No.
It can only be done under a SIL?
Yeah. But it could still be done, but it's a different route, and it's not for today. You'd have to take that outside and deal with that locally. Okay, so you're
No, I'm not.
not seconding. So we're still looking for a seconder for Councillor Bartlett. Robin Cook.
Robin Cook, Sarah Allen Bale Ward. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah. I'm inclined to support Councillor Bartlett. Then we've had a bit of more clarification on the reason for refusal, because the church is the one area that worries me. And I did ask a question earlier, quite rightly, we're looking at this particular application, but I haven't had enough what I call impact assessment on this sort of operation to see what effect it might, what wider effect it might have on the local community. And without that, I'm not happy. So I think I'm reasonably content now we've firmed up on the nursing home side of it, because again, that was another sticking point. Now, I've got that cast iron guarantee that it will be. There won't be any chinks or loopholes to get round it. So on that basis, I'm going to support recommendation as put down with those amendments. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further speakers. I know this is very difficult for everybody in the room, not just members of the public. But we are quite restricted in what we can and cannot do as a committee. It has been proposed and seconded to issue a split decision to grant the care home and to refuse the church development. And I haven't got the reasons in front of me, but they have been read out with the appropriate amendments that have already been mentioned and section 106. I should put it to the vote. Those in favour of supporting the split decision, please. 2. Those against? 2. Abstentions? Therefore, you leave it to Chairman's casting vote. I will go with the proposition on the table. We grant the split decision.
I'm just asking, was voting for the proposal?
If you vote for the proposal, can you show again, please? It's Robin and Shay.
Yeah.
Those against? Councillor Barron, you cannot vote on this one.
Can I vote it? No, I can't, can I?
No.
Oh dear, right.
Against? Those against, because I didn't see a proper show of hands first time round. 1, 2, 3, 4 against. In that case, the proposition falls. And I need a new proposition, please. For funding reasons. If members cannot come up with one, then I will propose from the chair that we take the opposite recommendation from the report as a substantive motion. And we'll ask for a seconder. Because I have no other choice. Do I have a seconder? We'll ask for some legal advice here, please, because we cannot not determine. We have to have good reasons for a decision either way.
Thank you, Chair. So it's for members to determine the application. My view that well, one of you needs to decide or make a proposition one way or the other. That proposition has to be given with reasons for refusal. It's not open. Not open for you to not make a decision today.
Do you want to go back, Shane?
Sorry, I should say. I mean that if you had sound reasons, deferral would be an option. So, but you have to come to a conclusion on what you want to do with this application today as a committee.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, it's understood you have been a proposal and chair, if you didn't have a member of this committee, make a proposal, put a proposal on the table. Is that if that is my understanding of what you intend to do, then I will second it, but with a heavy heart, I think it was a fair option.
We didn't really understand that, Chairman. Something clear.
As I said earlier, I think it's very difficult for everybody in this room. I said in moments earlier that if there is no proposal from the members of this committee, then I would propose the officer recommendation and I would need a seconder. What Shane has just said as vice chairman is that he would, albeit reluctantly, second that proposal. So I'll give you one more chance, members. Is there a proposal from the floor? Otherwise, I will move the officer recommendation. In that case, I propose you grant this application as per the officer recommendation. Do I have a seconder?
Madam Chairman, yes, I will second it somewhat reluctantly.
So should put that to the vote. Those in favour of the officer recommendation, please. 1, 2. Those against? 3. Abstentions? So members, we go around again. I need a proposal from you.
We're not clear on the voting, so could we just take that vote again with members showing clearly?
Those,
with one member short. Yeah, sorry.
those in favour of the officer recommendation, please. Can you show clearly? 2. Those against? 3. Abstentions? The extension. Okay.
Thank you.
Happy? Okay, so that falls. I need a proposal, please, members. No playtime, should you come up with a proposal, please?
Madam Chairman. Surely, if your proposal falls, then that means it's rejected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Thank you, Chair. So simply because a proposal falls doesn't mean it's an absence of a decision. So there is still, at the moment, there is no decision to be made. If members wish to refuse, if Councillor Titt, you're saying that effectively the mood of the committee through the votes that we've had is to refuse the application as a whole, then a member of the committee needs to propose that with reasons for that proposal, and then a vote will take place. You have to vote one way or the other.
Members, I need a proposal. Maybe.
I would propose that we reject the application on the grounds of 1, impact on Dorset Heathlands, 2, noise and disturbance to local residents, and 3, issues with traffic on inadequate roads.
I'm going to offer you a little bit of advice. I think you're on unsafe ground with traffic because of the amount of data that's been received. However, I think you need to put note of what Councillor Bartlett has said, quoting paragraph 128 of the NPPF.
That too.
Okay, so we have a proposal for refusal of the whole application. Impact, noise disturbance, paragraph 128 of the MPPF, section 106, and the updates that we had at the beginning of the meeting to the conditions. Is there anything else that needs to be included?
Can I ask a clarification about the impact on Dorset Heathlands? What that impact would be in terms of noise?
The impact would be on visitors to the site rather than necessarily residents who are presumably not going to be leaving the care home. But if we're getting visitors to the church at all sorts of times of day, and especially early in the morning, they may well be tempted to use the Heathlands for the recreational area.
Just because I don't believe it came up in our discussions, but there's no direct access to the Heathlands from the site. It is adjacent to it, but there's no direct access to it. The habitats regulations assessment has been carried out. Part of that is to do with the design of the parking, which we don't know yet, but we would look for it to be designed in a way that isn't adjacent to the heathland, for example, so there's less encouragement to use it. Also, there's requirement for the use of signage on the site and management requirements in terms of that parking and the use of that parking certainly at the care home. But those matters have been considered in the habitats regulations assessment.
I don't think this is a working on an effective plan.
Speak up, please, and speak near to the microphone.
Okay, let's start that again. You wanted a proposal. I've given you a proposal. You proposed acceptance as by the recommendations. That didn't carry. So the natural corollary will be to reject it. So that's my proposal. I've given reasons, and there are reasons, and I understand the officers might disagree, but the officers don't have a vote. So if anyone wants to second that, then I'm sure you will ask for that, and we'll proceed to a vote. And then if that doesn't pass, I'll leave it to your wisdom, Chair.
I think the important thing to note is that you need to have strong material conditions to support it, because if you are seen to be obstructed, not only would it go to appeal, you could lose, it could be costs. If you are seen to be deliberately obstructed, you have to have good planning. Quiet, please. You have to have good planning reasons for your proposal.
Okay, well, I gave a few that I think are good planning reasons. Other people's opinions may vary, but that's presumably what the committee can either say I'm right or I'm wrong.
Thank you, Chair. So, of course, you're right, Councillor, that you can make a proposal with and with the reasons that you put forward. What officers are trying to do is advise you about whether those reasons would be sustainable on appeal, and you've heard that text. Ultimately, it's for you as the proposer to take that advice on board or not. We have a proposal for those reasons. So when the chair looks for a seconder, it would be for the reasons that you ultimately land on, and then the committee would vote on those reasons. If other members of the committee think that the application should be determined, say, refused for other reasons, then that would mean to form a separate proposal.
Okay. Right.
I'm going to second that because it now contains comments about highway safety, which we're lacking in what Councillor Bartlett put forward. So I know that, as you say, we're probably on uncertain ground about because of the assessments that have been done, but I still believe that we can have a different opinion to our officers on that, especially as we had a site visit, seen for ourselves.
Yes.
In a second.
Okay, thank you. So, members, we've heard what's been said so far on this proposal. Does anyone wish to speak to the proposal? Okay, I will then we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour of refusing this application, under paragraph 128 of the NPPF, impact on the heathlands, noise disturbance, section 106, and the amendments that we were told of at the beginning of the meeting. I included everything.
Don't think you have about highway.
Adequate roads. In mind.
Yes, I did give you some advice on that, but however, members, if you wish to include traffic, you include traffic. Two people trying to whisper to me, I can't hear everyone. I think, given the sensitivity of this, the officers are requesting another short break so that we can sort out the emergency so that we get the resolution possible. Everybody's benefit. Okay, no. No. 5-minute recess, no more. Do you want to give us the wording that you've come up with to support? Can I have silence, please? You now have the wording, which I hope Dave Took will accept as proposer.
Thank you. So this is based on the debate and the proposal made by Councillor Took. Firstly, in relation to highways, the increased use of the existing junction of the avenue with Station Road by traffic movements associated with the proposed development would, by virtue of the limited visibility to the north of vehicles using the junction, be likely to prejudice the free flow of traffic and conditions of general safety, and is considered to have an unacceptable impact on highway safety, contrary to paragraph 115 of the NPPF. The next reason for refusal relates to traffic noise. The proposed development would detract from the living conditions of those nearby, with a specific reference to noise and disturbance, particularly in relation to Sunday early morning services at the proposed church. As such, there would be a conflict with policy HE2 of the East Dorset Core Strategy and paragraph 191A of the NPPF, insofar as that it seeks to prevent development that would have an undesirable impact through noise and disturbance. There's then a reason for refusal in relation to heathlands. Whilst mitigation is proposed on site, based on the information provided, it cannot be safely concluded that the scheme, with the proposed mitigation measures secured, would avoid an adverse effect on the adjoining international designated sites. This is contrary to policy ME1 of the East Dorset Core Strategy and paragraphs 181 to 183 of the NPPF. And finally, I believe there's reference to paragraph 128 of the NPPF. So the final reason for refusal would be in the absence of evidence of need for the church, the proposed development does not make efficient use of land, contrary to paragraph 128 of the NPPF.
Does that meet your expectations?
I think that covers it.
Thank you. Mike Dyer.
Yes, it's acceptable to me.
Okay. Shane, would you wish to make a request?
Madam Chair, thank you. Councillor Shane, one member, one minister. Before we go to the vote, Madam Chairman, could I ask that we have a recorded vote for 50 minutes, please, in the minutes of this meeting?
Okay. We need 3 members to support your request. Do we have any support, please? Look, I'll support it as well. So we'll have a recorded vote, please. Okay, so those in favour of refusal, as read out by the officers, proposed by David Took and seconded by Mike Dyer. Clearly show, please. Those in favour. 1, 2, 3. Those against? 1, 2. And abstentions? 1. Do the numbers add up this time? Yep. In that case, the application is refused.
You're around it.
I think they're.
Okay, so we will now move on to the next item on our agenda, but if you don't wish to stay for that, you're very welcome to leave.
Well, I know. Yes, it's very.
Thank you.
Thank you for your forbearance. It took a bit longer than I think we all expected.
I was listening to someone.
Okay. Agenda items 7 to 16 withdrawn by the applicant. So we move on to agenda item 8. The EOC 2023 07382 Barn, God's Blessing Lane in Holt. It's variation of condition 4 to the application. I'll just give you the last few numbers. 04925, conversion of agricultural barn to a single dwelling and alterations to provide windows to all habitable rooms, including 3 bedrooms and 2 reception rooms. Approved condition 4 was added under a non-material amendment to list the approval plans. Jane Black is going to be taking us through this one. Jane. And supported by Liz Adams, I should say. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. This application concerns a variation of a condition application that proposes an alteration to the approved plans for a barn conversion, mainly in respect of fenestration and floor plan amendments. A full assessment of the application is provided in the officer's report, and this presentation is intended to provide the context to the application and to outline the 2 relevant material considerations. The application site is located to the south of Holt, approximately 4.5 kilometres north of Wimborne. The application site, outlined in red, lies within the greenbelt outside the settlement boundary of Holt, as identified by the thick black line in the plan on the left. Prior approval for the conversion of the barn to residential use under Part 3, Class Q of the General Permitted Development Order 2015 was granted in 2019, 2021, and most recently in 2023. These photos were taken at the time of each application. Class Q allows for building operations reasonably necessary to convert the building. As previously mentioned, the site currently benefits from prior approval for the conversion of the barn to residential use. The current application seeks to amend the condition, listing the approved plans. On an application to vary a condition, only the condition attached can be considered. When assessing the revised plans, the only material considerations for a Class Q prior approval application that are relevant to the current proposal are the design and appearance of the building and the provision of adequate natural light to all habitable rooms. At this point, it's worth pointing out that the proposals do provide adequate light to the habitable rooms, and therefore the only remaining material consideration is the design or external appearance of the building. So on the left on the slide, we can see the format of the elevations currently approved, and on the right, we have the proposed elevation format. As you'll see from the next few slides, the changes to the external appearance relate primarily to the alteration of the windows and the introduction of solar panels. The main concern raised by the parish and neighbour relate to the proposed change in the appearance of the barn. For the southwest elevation here, facing the highway, officers are satisfied that the slightly wider windows and the recessed PV panels can be accommodated without harm to the character of the area. This is the southeast elevation, where the proposed fenestration is of a more contemporary design, but only the first floor windows will be evident in the street scene due to hedgerow screening as you approach the barn when heading west along God's Blessing Lane, as shown on the Google Street View photo. The rear elevation faces across the fields, and this is where it's proposed that the windows are slightly larger. And this is the view when heading east along God's Blessing Lane. Again, the fenestration will hardly be visible from any public viewpoint. This indicative image, with slightly exaggerated greenery to the right, shows a more modern arrangement of windows, but still with the resemblance of a barn. The development is therefore considered to be compatible with its surroundings in accordance with policy HE2. Just to update members, following the publication of the agenda, the site plan on the left is listed as a plan to be approved, but the approved site plan should be the plan on the right, which shows the curtilage in accordance with the permitted development criteria, which limits the extent of any curtilage to the size of the original building to be converted. Planning permission will be required for the garden as proposed in the superseded plan. The appropriate site plan is therefore Plan 002, which does not show any external detail around the barn. In summary, the proposed revisions to the external appearance of the elevations are considered to be acceptable in accordance with local plan policies HE2 and 3, and the recommendation is to grant plan permission subject to the above conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have one public speaker, which I believe is the applicant, Richard Freemantle. If you'd like to come to the table. That's going to be open now. Mr. Freemantle, you have 3 minutes to sign yourself to the.
It's correct if I press the button correctly.
No, just carry on.
Good morning. My wife and I bought the barn in November last year, following planning permission being granted. We're currently living on site with our 3 children in a static caravan, which I'm sure some people have driven past and they may have seen. With the help of our architect, a lot of time and consideration was spent making sure the internal layout was correct for our family, and also a lot of time and consideration of considering the impact on the different windows to driving along God's Blessing Lane, as you saw the photos from either direction, and also across the way, across the field, there's a number of closer houses along. Just in summary, the proposed changes have just been demonstrated, but we're essentially moving the 2 large 2-story gable windows. We propose to do that, which are clearly visible, and instead making the bedroom windows smaller upstairs and mainly increasing the glazing on the to the rear on the lower floor. We've increased the overall glazing by less than 10%, and the majority, most of that is all screened by a mature hedge, which is also reported in the officer's report. So essentially you can't see most of the glazing. Having considered the impact, obviously I was pleased that the planning committee's report noted that a lot of the changes couldn't be seen and were actually a benefit. And I'd just like to pick up on a couple of points named in the report. As I said, the barn is well screened by mature vegetation from views on both approaches along God's Blessing Lane. The proposed reduction in glazing on the northwest gable will generate less light spillage from the side elevation. Benefits other houses close by. Also, the proposal introduces circa 9% increase in fenestration, primarily on the northeast rear elevation, and the eastern lane, with less prominent in distant views from Holt Lane, is not considered a result of a significant increase in light spill, with no demonstrable harm to local landscape quality, and the proposal would not conflict with policy HE3. I'm very much aware, I guess, when we bought the plot, that people noticed the barn. It's got an elevated position. It's been part of the landscape for many years. The support I've received from neighbours about what we do and trying to do it properly, and also the support we've had in reducing those two big gable windows have been positive from our neighbours, passers by, dog walkers, and friendly that just stopped by and stopped for a chat. And now ask your support in supporting the application to make changes to the windows. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to make you go. Officers want to respond to anything? No? Okay. Robin, and then Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry to push in, Mike, but I just wanted to say, Gavin, I'm the ward member, but I'm not obviously here to speak as the ward member. I'm going to speak as a member of this committee. Okay, thank you. Robin Cook, Stour and Avon Ward.
You have the floor.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you very much. Yes. Very, very familiar with this structure. It is a feature of the skyline, if you like, going along that bit of road, particularly visiting Stewart's regularly and other places. It stands out, and it's great, I think, to see it being converted from that barn into something a bit more user friendly. And it's going to provide a home for family, a lovely home for a family. But as with all these, I get a lot of these actually on the ward. I get a lot of barn conversions, and they're not difficult, but they have to be sympathetically done. And I did have some worries when I first saw this, but I looked at it again, I read the report, and I think, no, if this blends in quite well, it's still going to be dominant, whichever way you do it, because it's the one only building, and you can see it actually from the distance from the north side as well in the distance. But I think generally the treatment that's proposed here, the darker colours will actually help it to blend. And if you see what I mean, it will help it to blend a little bit more with the darker shades. So I'm very happy to propose acceptance as given.
Thank you. Mike, you're the second speaker.
Yeah, I'm fine with it too. I do apologise, I didn't realise it was your ward. Yeah, happy to second.
Any other speakers? Dave.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So just as I look at slide 10, it's about the curvage. It's the writing is so small, I couldn't quite make it out. Is it the larger rectangle surrounding the footprint of the building? It is, that is the curvage, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Madam Chairman, yeah, I've looked at these proposals and the forms that we have in front of us, and I think it's an improvement on actually what was proposed beforehand, so I can make it as well.
No further speakers, I put it to the vote. Those in favour of grant as per the officer report. Unanimous. Thank you, members. That's easy. You have your permission, sir. Okay, if I go back to the agenda, item 9 is urgent items, there are none. Item 10 is exempt business, there is none. And before I close the meeting, I've received an email from Councillor John Worth, and I thought I would like to share the content with you. He would like to express his personal thanks. I enjoyed the whole experience of being on this committee. He will miss going to planning meetings and would like to wish all current members who are standing again every success in the forthcoming elections.
Nice.
I think we'll all miss him too. He's been a good asset to this committee. Yeah. With that, thank you all very much. Good luck in the elections.
Look, yeah, I feel each other. Anyway, good luck. I understand you again.